Welcome to Entrepreneurs International Network, where entrepreneurs learn, network, and grow. I'm Roger Killen, the organizer. Today, Robbie Samuels is training us on how to launch a successful offer, no matter the size of our list. Robbie, I've got 3 questions designed for us to get to know you a little bit better.
May I suggest that you put yourself in Spotlight with me? If you click on your own picture, you'll see Add Spotlight is an option. I mean, we'll be both on screen.
There we
go. Perfect.
All right. Question number 1 for Robbie. What is the biggest challenge you've ever had to overcome?
Besides parenthood? Well, let's see. So that's a nod to Warren, who was here earlier talking about our kids. Prior to the pandemic, I was best known as a networking expert, helping people navigate conferences. And back then, what that meant was going to events, being at events. And so you can imagine the challenge of having to find a way to offer value when the world suddenly all went online. So I'll be talking in a lot more detail about how I overcame that challenge, but the challenge was how to reinvent myself in light of the fact that the things I was known for were no longer needed in that moment of crisis.
Great. Question number 2. What's the best piece of advice anyone has ever given you?
My mother doesn't remember saying this to me, but when I was 12 and very disappointed about something that happened with my friends, she said, "You're only the main character in your own play," which is not a thing a 12-year-old wants to hear. But as an adult, I can appreciate the way in which this sort of frees us up. When we think we've made mistakes in conversations, most people are not paying as much attention to us as we think they are. What they're thinking about first and foremost is themselves. And what I've realized as someone who's trying to always help people connect with me and really attract people to the work that I'm doing, I need to translate what I'm doing to be of importance to what they need in that moment. So knowing that has helped me be better building my network, better with sales, better with service, and also to sometimes not beat myself up when something doesn't go quite right. You're only the main character in your own play.
Beautiful and so profound. Question number 3. What is one of the resources you use very often?
Probably my favorite tool is I'm going to say Schedule Once, which is a calendaring tool, and some other folks might use Acuity or Calendly or any number of things, but mine has been Schedule Once for 6 years. Oh, I've been muted as well. So it's very, very helpful to be able to suggest people, hey, let's connect, let's schedule a time, and not have to go back and forth on email 16 times to find a time, and to work across time zones. It just simplifies all of that. And I have different ones for my podcast, for, a colleague chat, and then someone who's like, I just have a quick question. I have that link, and I can block time in my calendar for that and reserve time in my calendar for everything else. So having a calendaring tool, I think, is just such a necessary part of running a business with some efficiency.
Yeah, I resisted that for a long time and then started using Calendly and thought, Roger, what was I thinking? So, Robbie, that's the last of our get to know you questions, but why don't we take this opportunity to explain the closed caption features that is probably new to many of our attendees. Nobody is better qualified to explain this and how people can save than you are. So why don't you explain this feature?
Happy to. So yes, there is a new feature that Roger has enabled that, by the way, is a free service provided by Zoom. And in a moment, I'm happy to put a link in chat to help you explain, to help you understand how to turn it on in your own Zoom account. But if you look down on the bottom right here, you'll see a CC button. If having subtitles or captions up would help you more fully engage with today's content, please go and check that out. There's even a way to adjust the size of the words if you need to. And for those who don't want to have that on, you can leave it off, but you may also want to check out that there is an option to view the full transcript when you click on the CC button. And what happens is the transcript running live appears here on the right side of the screen. And at the bottom of that little pop-up window is save transcript. Now, I don't recommend having that open the whole time. It's a bit distracting to see the words kind of coming in on the side. But at the end, perhaps Roger, at the end of this presentation, we can remind people if they would like to, they can save that. They want to go back because I'm going to get into some real detail with this content.
Right.
And I would also recommend to save the chat because I imagine we'll have some good resources shared there as well.
The main reason for us enabling the closed captions feature is that not everybody has great hearing. And so for those people who are hearing impaired, this is a great way for them to fully participate in each EIN meetup. Mm-hmm. Okay, participants, I have some words, sage words for you. Would you please turn on your video? From Robbie's point of view, it's quite discouraging to be looking at a bunch of black rectangles with names. Sure. So please, if you can, if you've got some clothes on, please turn on your, please come on camera. Come on camera, but please stay muted and type your questions into the chat. About every 10 minutes, I'll aggregate the questions and pose them to Robbie. You'll get your question answered by hook or by crook. In a couple of hours, I'll send you a link to the recording of Robbie's talk. But nevertheless, I still encourage you to try and take notes because the very act of taking notes is going to increase the information that you absorb, and often by as much as 30 to 40%. Robbie, are you ready to knock our socks off?
Absolutely.
The show is yours. Take it away.
Excellent. Thank you. And thank you to everyone else who has turned on their camera. And Roger, you can remove just you from the, there you go. Perfect. So welcome. And yes, if you're able to turn on your camera, it does help. I'm actually, you're viewing probably just me, but I'm actually viewing the gallery view in order to get a sense of your reaction and what's happening. And so it's just nice that we're not in a webinar, that we're actually in a Zoom meeting and I can see some of you. And like Yvonne, I can wave and say hello to a friend of mine. I know David's here and Penny's here, and some friends that I know from other times and places, and some new friends that I'm hoping to connect with as well. So I'm going to share my slides in just a moment. And I wanted to say that if you do have a question, and I want to encourage you to write it in chat, if you could just do Roger a favor and put the word question in all caps before your question, that way he knows it's a question and not a comment. Because I would also encourage you, if you have an aha moment or a takeaway, to jot it down, because that way you're providing some value to the fellow participants who are also following along. And then we all can remind each other to save the chat, and that becomes a really valuable resource. So yes, I want to share my my story because, as I sort of hinted at earlier, I have not always done what I'm known for now, and it was a process to become known for this. So see, prior to the pandemic, I was really focused on becoming a networking expert. Is something that I had been working on for over a decade. And I was for a while actually still employed at a nonprofit organizing fundraising events, but speaking had become a more and more frequent part of my life. I was doing up to 4 talks a month. I was taking days off from my day job to go travel. And I have a mentor who said, at some point, you'll know it's time to leave your job when it gets in the way of your business. So that's a more sage advice for someone to maybe consider for themselves. And so I did. And then I pretty soon after in 2015 started working on a podcast, which you see there, called On the Schmooze. And that was my initial foray into trying to identify my new audience, not the audience of nonprofit leaders that I had been working with, but I was trying to figure out who my new audience was. And I was teaching networking. So I have a podcast that is about leadership and networking and helping people really think through how do they sort of build and nurture their professional network. And I have some amazing guests that I have had come in who are talking about how they nurture and sustain their professional networks. And then I went and worked on a year later. So that launched in 2016. In 2017, my first book came out. Croissants versus Bagels, Strategic, Effective, and Inclusive Networking at Conferences. I'm going to just underline there because that becomes really important later on in the story. And then I had the opportunity in 2019 to do a TEDx, and my TEDx talk was all about how to, my favorite takeaway, which was croissants versus bagels. So croissants versus bagels is, let's explain the metaphor here. When you're walking into an event and people are standing in those tight clusters, those shoulder to shoulder huddles that are impossible to break into, you know what I mean? Like you walk in, you're like, I don't know where to go. Everyone's kind of knows each other. Well, what if someone in that circle shifts their body language and makes space for others to join? That's the croissant. And so I just dropped the link in chat to the TEDx because I invited people up on stage to actually interact with me and show off this physical stance, which is also mental preparation for going to events, which a lot of us, just we show up to events, but we're not really sure why we're there. So you can just imagine that when I get to March of 2020, I'm trying to figure out, well, okay, wait a second. All the things I'm known for, body language, business cards, shaking hands, eye contact. The body language back then was 6 feet away, please. And so I was trying to figure out how to show up and add value. That became my mantra, how to show up and add value, right? And so that led me to writing a little thing March 12th of 2020 called 9 Ways to Network in a Pandemic. And it was, very timely, right? It was very responsive to the moment. And I put it out there and people were like, oh, this is really helpful. Thank you. And so this is Thursday night and I'm thinking, what can I do on this list? And so that's what led me to host my first ever virtual happy hour. I had never done that. Even though I'd been on Zoom for a long time, it was mostly really in a one-to-one kind of way, like as a host of a podcast, as a coach doing one-on-one. I'd done some group work as coaching groups and masterminds, but never really thought to host a social, even though I loved gathering people together for dinner. So this is the funny thing is this is right on, is like the day the world hits pause. So we were not used to Zooming. You can tell the people didn't have the best setups. I didn't think to tell people to stop and look at the camera before taking the photo. I mean, all the sort of evidence there that this is not how I thought we were going to all be for the rest of the next few years. And about 20 people came and it was, I think, really nice. People had a good time. I think, for me, at least, maybe other people, I was just happy to be around people I wasn't in charge of feeding because that's what it seemed like my life was going to be. I mean, it's all that was happening. Like events were being canceled or postponed and I was stuck at home. And here I felt a connection out into the world. Within a few weeks, it became something that I just loved doing. People started coming to me asking for advice, support, services around Zoom. They wanted to know how to do certain things. And the thing is, I didn't open up breakout rooms until March 20th, 2020, meaning I didn't know I had them. And suddenly I'm a Zoom expert just by doing it repeatedly and consistently getting a little bit better. So I fortunately was able to turn all these inquiries into research calls because there was a part of me, honestly, that was just going to be happy to have lots of social visits on my calendar with people because I'm this like extrovert and suddenly I'm stuck at home. And so this like natural tendency was that I just wanted to hang out and talk to people. But I, at that moment, was coaching entrepreneurs as part of this program on behalf of a company. And I was working with about a dozen entrepreneurs a week. And they were all in the process of this chaotic moment as well. And I realized I would never give a client the advice to just fill up their calendar with social chats, right? That just doesn't make sense. It's not a way to monetize anything. So I thought, what would I tell them to do? I would tell them to do research calls, figure out what people really need, and then provide that value. And so that is actually how I was able to pretty quickly turn what I was doing into a weekly event, which became branded as the No More Bad Zoom Virtual Happy Hour. And that's something that I'm actually still hosting. I mean, here we are, 22 months later. So put a little information in chat about that as well. So this has just been this thing that kind of blows up. And I realized also that people need help figuring out how to run their own events, whether they're speakers that are trying to figure out how to take their in-person presentations online, or they're meeting professionals that are suddenly finding that they need to create new tools, they need new skill sets. And so from that, I was able to create a 4-week program that I actually announced in mid-April and started the beginning of May. And I ran it 4 months in a row. It was a 4-week training. And by the 3rd month, it became a certification program. You're seeing the badge people can earn to become a certified virtual event professional. So this was all about just being responsive, right? Listening to what people need and engaging with people around this, which also led to people seeing me as even more of a Zoom expert, and companies, mission-driven organizations in particular, started reaching out to me and asking me to help them bring their events online with less stress and greater participant engagement. As one of my clients said to me, we didn't hire our staff to be Zoom experts. And if they're busy trying to figure out how to run Zoom, they're not able to do everything else they're supposed to be doing. And it's causing them a lot of stress. We want you to keep up with what's going on, all the changes, and you can like do some in-services and training for us so we're competent in this space, but we don't want to be the experts. And so I was really fortunate. You're seeing some of the clients I work with most frequently starting in 2020 that I was able to provide this kind of service and value. And I look up from a very busy 2020, right? I'm still coaching people. I thought I said yes to even more work from that company because I thought that I was going to have no business. I mean, I kind of in March didn't have a business, but by the summer and into the fall, I look up and I realized that in just 8 months since March, I had built a thriving 6-figure company, and that continued into 2021. It didn't slow down. I mean, we didn't magically all go back to in-person events, and I was able to actually move my family to the Philadelphia suburbs. And then 7 weeks later, we moved into our dream home, which honestly wasn't even a plan a couple of years earlier. It was like on such a far off distance hope. So this is all the things that's possible about paying attention and really understanding what people need. And I kept getting this question over and over again, which was, Robbie, how did you do that? Right? How did you build this thriving 6-figure company in the middle of a pandemic, no less? And what can we learn from you about doing that? And so I wrote Small List, Bigger Results, Launch a Successful Offer no matter the size of your email list, in order to share those strategies that I was teaching my clients, that I was following myself, and that I'm going to now dig into with you. And you can take tons of notes. And I'm also going to share some resources that you can use to further investigate this, not just the book, but I've created a whole bunch of content in a toolkit that I'll make available to you. So stick around so you get access to that. So that's what we're here to talk about. And I wanted to start with this question, because I think you've had this experience. You create some kind of solution, but when you bring it to people, they're like, huh, what is this? Who are you? I don't need this. And you're like, but you do. I know you do. So let's think for a moment about why that's happening. So here's what I can tell you. They're not experts. They don't see what you see, right? They're seeing the perspective from a very different angle. So they're really not aware of the bigger issue. So they're not open to the bigger problem. So here's one way to think about it. There's this awareness scale, and I did not create this. I have built upon other people doing this. The first mention of it actually is from a book in 1966. So it is not new. I'm repackaging it a little bit because usually people call this first stage of awareness, they call it symptom aware. I think it's a little bit of an insult to our likely prospects to call it a symptom, because from their perspective, it's not a symptom, it's a problem. Now, they're not aware of the bigger problem, so they don't know that it's not the full problem, but it's something that's really bothering them. So it's a little p problem. And I think that what's happening is that you, as a person with more knowledge and experience and awareness, and look at that sort of bird's eye view of the problem, you're aware of the bigger P problem, right? You're aware of the actual problem. But unfortunately, until you help people move from that little P problem to that big P problem, they're not going to be open to your solution because it just doesn't make sense to them. They're not looking for that kind of, it seems like too much almost. But if they become aware of the big P problem, and they become then more interested in learning about some kind of solution, well, then they become aware of you being the kind of person who can guide them through implementing that solution, no matter how challenging it may be. And then the only question left to see whether or not they're actually ready to buy from you is going to be about the cost of an action. Is it now? Because before, when they were just stuck in the little P, they did not know enough to know what they weren't taking action on. So they weren't making a decision not to take action. But once they have this awareness and they know there's a solution and they know that you're available to help them implement that solution, if they don't take action, that is a decision, right? Well, what if they decide to push it off? Well, I'll deal with it next year. At some point, there may be a cost to that inaction. And when that cost of inaction is too great for them, they're going to come to you to find out how you can help them, because you're the one who helped them realize the problem in the first place. You're the one who introduced the idea of a solution. So they're going to come to you and look for more. All right, I have a really ridiculous example to share with you to drive this point home. Let's say you come to me and you've got an itch on your arm. You've got this rash, and you come to me and you say, Robbie, I've got this rash that's showing up, and I just need some anti-itch cream. You got any anti-itch cream? And I look at your arm and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, that's poison ivy. Hey, can you tell me a little bit about where were you when this happened? And, you know, I'm a coach, so I'm asking some thoughtful questions. And, you know, after a few minutes of asking questions, I come to realize that every time you go in your backyard, every time you get another patch of a rash somewhere on your body. Now, you actually had not realized this in a totality. You've been treating each individual instance completely separately. You would go out, you would get a rash, you would find anti-itch cream, you'd move on with your life. But now that I pointed this out to you, you're like, wow, this is actually happening all the time. And I'm becoming a little bit alarmed because the frequency is so high that you must have just poison ivy infesting your entire yard. Like, we should probably just redo your entire landscaping. In fact, I have a friend who's got a bulldozer. We can start there, and he's got a construction company and they can do landscape. But what if I handed you the phone number of my friend who has a bulldozer and said, he's just going to raise your ground down to dirt so that you can pull all that greenery out. You won't have to deal with it. We'll start all over from scratch. You're okay. Like, you were expecting there to be anti-itch cream as a solution. This is too big, right? So let's think through, what is it that people are wanting and what can we actually give them? So let me see if I can go find my slides again here. Oh, here we go. All right. So here we've got lots of poison ivy. That's the big P. We've got my solution, my big solution that they're not going to be open to. It is a ridiculous idea. But what if instead I said to him or her or you, listen, why don't you try a few things over the next few weeks to see what you can do to minimize this happening? Now that you know it's happening and happening with such great frequency, what do you think you can try? And I have them come up with a few solutions. You come up with some few solutions. Maybe you're going to, first of all, do you know what it looks like? I mean, that would be maybe there's some education. Do you know what it looks like? So, okay, first we have to tell people what this looks like. Okay, then we're going to have you go and maybe rope off an area of your yard, or maybe you're going to put down walking stones. So you go away a couple weeks, you come back and you realize that everything you've tried, every half measure hasn't worked. And so now you are feeling ready to actually engage and actually look for a bigger solution. You really, really want to resolve this. So that is, to me, that is a bit of a ridiculous example. Here is a real life example that happened. This was my book cover on the left is what I loved when my designer gave me the first bunch of cover designs. I was like, yeah, that's totally rad. I love it. And actually the subtitle at that time the title was Small List, Big Ambition originally. So I'll tell you why it's not that. Small List, Big Ambition. And the subtitle was Leverage Your Network to Grow Your Business. So you can see that I really like networking. And so I see networking as a solution to this problem, but that's not the solution people are looking for. So I had to become first aware of what people had needs on around building their list. Like, what's happening is people are trying to sell something. They have this idea, they create this solution, they create this offer, and they're hearing crickets when they bring it to the marketplace. So what they then think as the entrepreneur, and perhaps you've thought this, is happening because I don't have a big enough email list. So the solution that they're looking to solve for is the size of their email list. And they might have entertained or even hired the idea of someone to help them with Facebook ads, or maybe they have looked into hosting a virtual summit in order to build their email list, right? But the problem is all those promotional efforts don't work if the thing you're trying to offer people doesn't match with what they need. So I had to sort of find a way to meet people where they were and bring them in. Smallest Big Ambition was the original title, but my ideal clients, or my ideal readers in this case, are entrepreneurial women, inspiring entrepreneurial women over 50 who are looking to grow their impact and income through some kind of new revenue stream. And I also work with some awesome entrepreneurial men as well. And what they told me, these women, in my research and efforts, and I posted this on a bunch of social posts and talked to people, women over 45 did not love the word ambition. They're like, that doesn't match with me. Women under 45, by the way, loved it. It was sort of an interesting thing to realize. And so I'm like, oh, wait a second. If that's not going to help attract my ideal reader, then I should change that. So then I thought, well, hey, everybody, how about small list, big goals? And so someone wrote, I have enough goals. I need results. And 4 or 5 other women like jumped on that side comment and they were like, exactly this. Yes. I'm like, so small is big results. We debated whether or not to include an exclamation point, right? In the end, it felt cheesy and overdone and it's not who I am. But we couldn't use the graphic on the left because they loved the graphic on the right, because that spoke to them differently. I got all this positive feedback from all these women telling me how much they love that design. And then they gave me feedback to make it even better. Originally, every other figure in that was a man or a woman, those little symbols. So then I put 2/3 were women because I'm mostly reaching out to women. Then we put some non-binary people in as a suggestion was made. And as an out trans guy, I really appreciated that people wanted that. We put some people who are getting around through wheelchairs. We put that in as well. So we wanted to reflect the networks that we are living in. And that really spoke to people more than the symbolism of networking, which is a solution they're not looking for, right? So what do you think of that image on the right? It's like a kind of a Rorschach test. I always call it a Wi-Fi symbol because it's like the way people know what I mean when I say that. But some people think it's a person standing there broadcasting a message. Some people think of it as a stage. Some people think of it as building, right? I love the fact that people can connect with it in their own way. And the biggest lesson that I learned from doing all that testing is that I could create a great book. And I actually did co-create the book. In fact, back in 2018, after my second book came out, I started working on my first group coaching program, which I document my efforts and eventual success in the second book. But I ran a series of masterclasses in order to flush out the content that eventually went into this book. So I knew the book had the right information. I mean, I held off in publishing it for a few years. I worked with a lot more entrepreneurs, had a lot more stories, had a lot more granular how-tos to share. But really, the book started being written back in 2018. But what if I packaged it incorrectly? What if I didn't package it to attract the people that I knew would most benefit from this? That would really miss the mark. So here's the biggest lesson. I am not my ideal reader. I am not my ideal client. And I know that you might be thinking, but I am. I'm doing the work I'm doing in the world because I once had this problem. Yes, you once had this problem. You no longer do. So even though you may have some empathy and some experience with that, you don't know today how people who have that problem are facing. In fact, the world's changed dramatically in a few years. So there might be a lot of new concerns that they're worrying about that you're not thinking of. So with that, I want to just pause here and see if there are any questions from Roger before I move on to the next section.
No, Robbie, no questions. Back to you.
Brilliant. And thank you, folks. If you do have a question, do chime in. I want to be responsive to what's happening in the moment here. Okay, so we're going to get into the details of this. And I'm going to start off with this quote. Okay, I have this belief that you have already met 80% of the people you need to know to be successful. And I want you to sort of sit with that for a moment, because so many of us, when we're thinking about networking, we're thinking about meeting new people. We're thinking about going to places where people don't know us. We're thinking about maybe passing our business card out or doing Facebook ads or some other thing. But I believe you've already met 80% of the people you need to know to be successful. Now, some of us have small lists. In fact, I did this with this presentation, a longer version for the Worldwide Business and Executive Coach Summit. It's a global coaching community just last week. And we did a poll, and I think it was like 70% had less than 500 people on an email list. And these are, people who think of themselves as coaches, they're successful, they've got, business routes running, but they just haven't cultivated an email list. I get it. And that might be true for some of us. So the thing is that sometimes we look at our email list, let me say it's small, 250. And the funny thing about an email list is that it's the eye of the beholder. Like, if you don't have an email list at all, 250 might sound like a lot. My assistant, when I was writing this book, admitted to me that she had 2 people on her email list, and it was her mom and her husband. And now she has this daily email that's really awesome that she posts, that's just short and quick and funny and has like funny memes in it. And it's just, I look forward to reading it every day. And, now she's got, I think, 15 people on her email list. Got to start somewhere. So for her, 250 sounds big, but for some people, 2,000 sounds big. And for other people, 2,000 sounds small because they know people who have 5,000. And 5,000 could sound small if you know people who have 10,000, right? So it's your judgment call whether you have a small list. But we should not look at just our email list. We should also be looking at our extended network, the people that we know through other resources, other channels, other avenues, other social channels. And so, you've got your LinkedIn, and if you're active on LinkedIn at all, you're gonna have at least 500 people, right? We aim for that. Some of us have multiple thousands of people on our LinkedIn list, I should say. Then you've got Facebook, which is probably bigger because you've been on Facebook longer than LinkedIn. And you also have it be social connections as well as business connections. And you may be really surprised that your phone address book may have the most contacts of all, or more than you would think, because you've had this device, and every time you get a new device, you just import contacts from the old to the new. And I checked, and I have contacts in my phone address book that are from 12 and 15 years ago, right? Back when I used to be more regularly in touch with people via a phone and not PMs. So back in the day, when we used to actually call people. And then you also may have an email address book, which maybe back in the day you had an Outlook address book, and maybe you have a Gmail address book. There are some email systems also allow you to have a sort of frequently contacted email address list. So I see some questions about email list managers and automated systems and all that good stuff. I'm going to actually sidestep that question briefly because this isn't about your email list. This is about you reaching out to and nurturing this extended network. I want you to be able to find and discover the people within your extended network who already know, like, and trust you, that are likely prospects and likely referral partners. So I'm going to pause and see if there are any other questions that I may have missed before we head over to the next thing.
No, Robbie, carry on regardless.
Brilliant. All right, so I'm realizing that I want to make sure I show you this slide. So this is where you can really kind of get a sense of just like how many people there may be. I'd love for you to really take a moment and document that for yourself. You may also want to add in Instagram or Twitter or Pinterest. Like, where are your people? Where do you interact with the people who are most likely to be interested in your work, in your topic? And really, like, sit down and do a bit of investigation to get a better understanding of where those people are and how you can reach out to them. Now, for the purpose of this interaction, I'm going to kind of focus on LinkedIn for a moment, because LinkedIn actually makes it really easy to download a list of your contacts. They do change this now and again, so I'm going to recommend that if you want to download your list of LinkedIn contacts, that you actually Google that question and it'll point you to exactly how to do it, but it'll download your contacts into a CSV file. Now, it's quite possible that it will not include very many email addresses because that is a setting where an email may be on someone's profile, but not, you have to sort of opt in to having it download in a spreadsheet. And most people have not opted in. But don't be deterred by that, because the number of people we're going to ultimately be reaching out to are 20 to 30. And you can find a way to contact 20 to 30 people through some means to reach out and suggest setting up a chat. All right, here it is. Time to wake up your network. And I'm also, actually, I want to go back. Oh, I think we're good. Okay, so we've got this process that I want to go through. It's called Wake Up Your Network. And I'm going to go through this fairly quickly. I'm also going to share with you a workbook that you can download to go through this on your own. And this is also detailed in the book if you want to get that as well. But if you just go through the free resource that I'm sharing, it will give you a lot of information to get started. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to have that list that we've downloaded of contacts from LinkedIn. And it's going to be in a CSV file, which is a spreadsheet. Now, I like to bring it up onto Google Sheets because then I have access to it anywhere. And some of you are going to tell me you don't like using Excel or spreadsheets. And yes, you can do this with paper and pen. I just think it's a little more cumbersome. And I like the certain things that can be automated with a spreadsheet. But don't let the spreadsheet tech piece deter you from taking steps towards this. You can absolutely find a way to do this with paper and pen. So you'll add 6 columns, A through F, in front of the first name of the person you download. And I see Jen is busy making her grid. Perfect. Feel free to take screenshots too if you'd like. That helps you. And so the question for the consider column is, would they remember my name and would I be happy to hear from them out of the blue? Would they remember my name and would I be happy to hear from them out of the blue? Now that second part's key because people are not all equal. There might be someone who will remember your name from 10 years ago, but you're like, oh, that guy, I don't want to hear from him. Don't reach out. But if you're like, oh my God, Jen, definitely reach out. Okay. So that's the first part. Put an X in the consider column. Now we're going to jump over to connection. So for connection, influence, and interest, you're going to put a 1, 2, or 3. 3 is always strongest. There are no half points. There is no zeros. And this is not meant to be a research project. This is based on your gut. So for connection, how strong is your connection? So the question here really is, will they definitely respond? Or do you have to make an effort for them to respond? Or is it somewhere in between? So you know, based on the strength of your connection, how likely is this person to get back to you, right? And that's a 1, 2, or 3. Now we're gonna go to influence. How strong is their influence? Now influence for me, I'll define as they get excited about what you're talking about and they can tell lots of people. In fact, they're gonna tell not just lots of people, but the right kind of people that you want to have know about this, they can come reach out to you. Are they very likely to have that happen? Or no matter how excited they get, they really couldn't really tell that many people. So my mom could love what you're doing, David, but it doesn't mean that she's going to be able to tell lots of people. She may tell one perfect person, and that could be great. I don't want to discount that, but she doesn't have a following. She doesn't have an audience. She doesn't have a community, right? So that is an example of a 1. Now, an interesting thing about influence is it also is context-based. So if you're doing something that's very local, you're working in a certain city or region, and you know someone who is the immediate past president of the local business chamber, well, that person will have a lot of influence in that setting. They probably know everybody, and everybody knows them. But if you are looking to do something on a national or global scale, and you have that immediate past president of your local chamber on your list, their influence will not be as great. So this number will change as you go back to this list over time. But for this moment in time, considering what you're trying to do, what is their influence? Again, this is not a research project, just based on what you know about them, what would you say? Now, last one is interest. So you are certain they want to talk about this, or really there is no evidence that they'd be interested. That is your 2 extremes. And then you want to add those numbers up. Again, I love spreadsheets because there's a formula that you can use to easily make this happen in the F column. This formula works whether it's Google Sheets or an Excel or CSV file. You just add those all up. Now, you're not going to reach out to all these people. We're going to do some prioritizing. But the first set of prioritizing is if someone scores less than a 5, a 4 or below, then you want to go back to the consider column and change the X to a Z. Now, we don't want to delete them because they still met that first criteria of they would remember my name and I'd be happy to hear from them in the blue. And it's possible that 6 months or 18 months or 4 years from now, you'll be doing something new. And this will be the perfect person to reach out to based on their interest and their influence. So don't delete them. But for the moment, you don't want to be focusing on them. You want to kind of move them off to the side. In fact, the next step would be to sort the sheet so that all the Z's drop to the bottom and you can kind of snooze them to the bottom of the spreadsheet. I see a question for step 5. Here it is, adding up the numbers. Step 5, adding up the numbers. Step 6, if it's lower than a 5, you're going to put a Z in column A, and then we're going to sort so that all column A, the Z's go to the bottom. Absolutely, Connor. All right. Last part of this is we're going to assign some categories. So I'll just mention what a coffee chat is. It's the people who don't meet the criteria for the other 2 that I'm going to mention, but you're still really happy to hear, like, see their name. I think it's worthwhile to keep a few of those people on your list each week, each month, because it kind of gets you excited to do this, but don't have too many, because while there's a chance they'll end up being a great contact for this, you could just fill your calendar with social calls, and that's not going to help you build a pipeline. So you're going to look for first, we have these referral partners. Referral partners have high influence and they have interest. So they're, a higher influence, like a 3 influence and a 2 or 3 interest. They may end up being interested for themselves as well. They might end up being a likely prospect, but, in this context, Roger is a referral partner because Roger has a lot of influence. He has this amazing global community, and he clearly has some interest in my topic, or he wouldn't have invited me to come. So this is great. He's interested. We can have a whole conversation. He now knows more about what I do. A likely prospect has not as high of the influence, but they're very high interest. So it's an individual who you think would really be excited to have this conversation with you. All right. Any questions, Roger, that I should address?
No questions. You're clearly doing an amazing job because
I'm being uber clear. I love it.
Yes, you are.
And I am making sure there is time, folks, for dialogue at the end. I sort of manage the amount of content here to make sure we are leaving time for conversation if we don't address your question here. All right, so let's talk about referral partners who may also be fellow experts. So I a moment ago said that Roger is a referral partner. As far as I know, he is not a fellow expert. He does not do this work. This is not what he is known for. So a fellow expert is somebody who serves a similar audience as you, doing something along the lines of what you do. Now, there might be some nuances, like you could be an editor, and just because you know another editor doesn't mean that you might actually do different genres of books, right? Like one might also do ghostwriting and one doesn't. So this is where it's important for you to differentiate you from the other folks in your network who might be doing something similar. So having conversations with fellow experts can be very helpful for you to understand what are the holes in the market that they see, and how might you be the one, based on your experience and your interest, to fill those holes. They might be looking for someone they could refer for a particular kind of work and be very happy to know that you do that kind of work. So I by no means think that fellow experts means competitor. I absolutely think that it's collaborator. They could be the person who you will, co-run some kind of training together. You could be invited onto their membership platform and you might return the favor, invite them to be on your podcast, right? Collaboration really is so key to this. So you want to have a sense of who these referral partners are and these fellow experts. And the kind of research calls you're going to have with them, the preparation is not as great because they know a lot about this topic. So you're just going to really have a chat with them about what you're doing and what they see. And, based on what you see your members needing, like, I'd love to hear your thoughts. What do you think is going on? Kind of, you're trying to get a sense from them. what are the little p problems that people talk about, right? In your space, in your membership group, in your network, what are the little p problems? Because you want to get a better understanding of that. So now we have likely prospects, and I put 3 not free. And I put 3 not free because I wanted to have a conversation about, have you ever had it happen where you give away a free hour's worth of awesome advice, and that person takes tons of notes, and they, at the end of the call, feel awesome, and you feeling pretty good about yourself too. But then that person ultimately hires someone else? Has anyone here? You know what? We have the option here to do yes, no. If you click on, oh, we actually don't have. So you can give me a thumbs up if that has happened. I'm seeing a yes, but if you've got a thumbs up in your reactions down here, yep, I see. Over your off camera, you can. So people are definitely feeling that. Okay, let me tell you what happened. This is the I feel like Grandpa Robbie here. I'm going to tell you a little story about about how that happened. So people got really excited from the conversation with you. They took tons of notes, but in reality, you did not give them a strategy. You gave them a bunch of tactics. You probably didn't even know a ton about them. You just thought of valuable things, and you were like, oh, and then there's this, and there's this, and there's this, and they were scribbling notes. People rarely take action very quickly on free advice. So a few weeks later, they find this notepad full of chicken scratch, and they're trying to make heads or tails of it. They can't quite remember what the steps were. And of course, they weren't actually steps. There was no direction. There was no strategy. But they are embarrassed to come talk to you because you were so generous. They don't want to tell you that they haven't done anything yet. They don't want to ask for more of your time. In fact, they see you in person or online, and they're like trying to not make eye contact because they don't want to have you come over and say, hey, Warren, you know, when we chatted, I was sharing, what did you do with it? You know, because Warren doesn't want to be put in the spot to be like, didn't really do anything. So Warren goes and finds somebody else in his network who can help him make heads or tails of all of this. And that's ultimately who he probably will work with, or he'll work with no one and kind of just stay mired in this. He will not seek out you as that resource. And how do we avoid this? We come to these calls very clear. We are not pitching an idea. I want to be super clear on this. When we're doing these research calls, it's not because we have a fully formed plan. We don't have a solution, an offer, a program, an online course, an app. We don't have it figured out. We're not calling people to say, do you want this? Or what do you think about this? Because that will narrow the conversation to that one thing. And there's possibly an adjacent thing that they very much need help with. But if you don't invite them to share it, they're not going to tell you. What I would do with your likely prospects is ask them, and I'll share in a moment some tips on how to schedule these calls, what to send in an email. I'll give you some script language for that. But I asked them in the follow-up message to come to this call with 3 examples to share within the context of the topic you've given them. 3 scenarios, 3 challenges, 3 problems, 3 examples. And the trick here is that when they share them, you don't solve them right away. Because if you just go, oh, that's, because of course they're going to share little p problems, and you're going to be like, that's nothing. Do this, this, this. That's not going to help them realize the bigger problem. So instead, take some time to really ask them why these questions, why these problems, why these challenges. You know, how is it impacting your life, your business, your revenue, your family, your sleep? You know, what have you tried to solve for these? How, you know, what's worked, what hasn't? What do you think would work? How important is it even to you that you fix this? And here's the thing we have to pay attention. Do not see a problem that you think you can sell a solution to where there is no problem that needs a solution to be sold to. So if people are telling you, well, you know, I haven't really tried, I haven't really looked. No, I didn't Google that. No, I didn't look in the App Store for that. I didn't really even think to look if there's, if they didn't think to look at the existing things that are out there, why are they going to be super excited about yours? They, like, either it is not the biggest problem of all the things they are faced with, or it's a chronic problem and they've stopped trying to fix for it. Like the effort to try to solve for it is just demoralizing, and they just can't. So think about, really truly listening to people's feedback, and then that will help you. And we talked earlier about doing the captions, and some folks may have missed this, but this is a really key skill set to have. There's a way to enable captions, and we have them turned on right now, but it gives you a full transcript, and that's a link to a video I created that will show you how to set this up. But if you do this over Zoom, and it's a 30-minute call, and I'll give you the pacing of how that call will go, you can get a transcript immediately after the call with the recording that you can then pull problem language out of. And a resource in the toolkit I'm going to give you is called Analyze Problem Language. So you have to know how do you take that information out and look at the themes, look at the forest, not just the trees. So here's the structure of that 30-minute call. This is probably a person you haven't talked to in a while. So the first 5 minutes are going to be catch up, but it's your job to hold the space for the intended purpose, not theirs. So at 5 minutes, you have to say, this has been really awesome. We should do more of that. Let's schedule another separate time to truly kick back and catch up over our favorite beverage of choice. But I did ask you to come with 3 questions or 3 scenarios, whatever. Can you share those now? Let's use the time we have to dig into that. And since that's what they said yes to, they'll happily move along. But if you don't host, if you don't control that space, that container, then you will have spent half an hour catching up with an old friend, but not learned anything. And then you spend 15 minutes trying to really understand those 3 points. Is there something else that you're thinking of now that maybe is of a higher importance, a greater urgency than the 3 things you mentioned? Like really asking those kinds of questions, better understand where they're coming from. And then you spend the last 10 minutes, and yes, more or less, you're trying to find urgent problems in there, for at least from their perspective, urgent problems. So then we have the last 10 minutes that instead of you're giving them like a ton of advice, you're going to come up with 1 or 2 things that you think they could try in the next few weeks. And what I like to tell people is when I work with people, I cannot diagnose what's going on and provide a strategy in 15 minutes, which is why I offer a 3-hour deep dive for anyone who works one-on-one with me before we get into our every 2-week meeting. Because that is how we're going to understand their vision, their values. We'll come up with a strategy plan. We'll document it. We'll create OKRs, which is a way of documenting a plan. So what I'm offering you in these last few minutes are things that people I know who are in situations similar to yours have found valuable. And if you start moving towards this and it's not ending up be helpful, or you get stuck, please reach out. I would love to help you. And if it means introducing to someone else who might have a great resource for you or help you along the way, or I can help you further, like just reach out. And I'm going to continue to have these calls, and I'll come back to you as I learn things, because I think what I'm learning from this is going to be really valuable to you. So I'll be back in touch if it makes sense for me to share what I'm learning. So you're leaving that door open. So not only are you leaving your door open to reaching back out to them, but you're really inviting them to reach back out to you, and you're not overwhelming them with tons of advice. You're giving them just a few things to think about. And as we are concluding this, I want to just share this very simple idea that 2/3 of the people that you reach out to should be prospects. And that really you're just going to be reaching out to 20 or 30 people in a 6 to 12 week time frame. That is your ultimate goal, because you could spend 1.5 years trying to sell whatever it is you're trying to sell, or you can really have a good sense from people of what it is they need and co-create what they need with them. So we want to make sure we are being thoughtful about that. Just checking the time here. How am I doing with timing, Roger?
You've got another 10 minutes.
Brilliant. All right. We're going to wrap this up, and then we'll get to any questions that are coming up. And so if you do have a question, this is a good time to share it. If you don't have 2/3 of the calls be prospects, if you lean more into your fellow experts or your likely referral partners or your coffee chats, you just won't be building a pipeline of people who actually want to buy from you. And that's just, it'll fuel your ego, but it won't help you build your bank account. All right, here is something you can take a screenshot of if you'd like. This is the text that I would suggest you working off of as a script, the template for your initial outreach. And I think most people are just too verbose in this initial message. They feel like they've got to explain everything. People don't need a ton of detail, and they're going to ignore it if it's too long. So you want to get really clear and have the ask very much up front. Do not in this moment include a link to schedule on your calendar, although I do think it's helpful to have a scheduling tool in order to set these up, but I would offer that in the follow-up message after people get back to you. So I'm working on something new and I need to test my assumptions. I thought based on your experience with XYZ, you'd have helpful feedback. Can we set up a time to chat? Now, what's cool is that if you haven't talked to someone in 5 or 10 years, you can still send something like this, because you can say, I thought of you because you have this experience. Like you popped into my, you don't have to say, I did this entire analysis of my network. And that, Jen, is how I came to find your name. No, you're just like, oh, I just thought of you. People want to be helpful. People want to have an opinion that they can share. This is how you get people to help you with that. Do not forget to hit record. Do not forget to enable captions. You'll be very sad. You cannot capture notes effectively while doing this and look at people. My suggestion is that you learn how to look at the camera as you're talking to people, even in one-on-one conversations, to create that level of connection, intimacy. Look for the themes. Themes make me think of theme parks. So, when you get all that information, I could do a whole training on how to actually do the analysis. I've given you some tools. I've given you a book that you can read through, but look for the themes so you can start to think, okay, here are things people are mentioning. Now the question is urgency. Second follow-up call. This is after you've met with them. Now you have an idea of what you want to offer in a pilot. You've got a sense of what the pilot promise is. The pilot promise to me is the outcome that people will achieve, assuming they show up and do the work. It is the general outcome, not an outlier outcome. It's like people should just generally get this outcome. It's not even the thing you have to remember with a pilot. It's not everything. It's not your full program, but it's going to resolve a small P problem that people have. And then as part of the pilot, you will also introduce people to the bigger problems so they understand they do more work than that. And you can say, basically something they said to you during those initial round of calls stuck with you. Here's that bit of information. And I'd love to come back and share with you kind of the progress of this. Can we set up some more time to chat? And I have here a magical question that I'm going to end my slides on, and then we'll talk about any questions you may have. Sometimes it happens that you get into a conversation with people who just a random get to know you call. Roger and I are on a conversation. Next thing you know, I'm teaching him about Zoom. That's another hat that I wear, right? Like this happens. And sometimes you realize I'm giving them all this advice, and you want to stop yourself from giving like an hour's worth of free advice because now that doesn't work. So here is the magical question I'm going to share with you that helps you stop doing that and shift the conversation into a question of maybe this is a conversation of us working together. So you've already been chatting with them. You've given them a couple of tips and ideas. Clearly they're jiving with it and they loving it. And you basically have to stop yourself from giving more advice. You say, I have so many ideas for you because you sound a lot like my clients. Would you like to hear what it would be like for us to work together? Take a screenshot. You have money that you have been leaving on the table. You may have calls in the last week where this would have been helpful. Yeah. If you don't have it, you can either capture the screenshot. I see people picking their phones up, grabbing it. That's perfect. Okay. I would love you to share this. I put my hashtag and my @ so you can, whatever social posts you want to put this on, give this one away. This is something that everyone in your network who's got a business could benefit from having that information. Because there is a moment in a conversation with people where you want to shift it. Now, do you then pitch them your plan, your offer? No. What I would suggest is you follow up with a story about a client you worked with, whom they remind you of, and the outcome that client achieved by working with you. And make that a quick and tight story. And then you would follow up by saying, is that the kind of outcome you're looking for? And if they say yes, you say, would you like to hear how we did that? And if they say yes, you say the general outlines. It was a group program, or we worked one-on-one. And I once said, it was a group program, and a woman interrupted me and said, "Oh, do you do any one-on-one? Because I'm not actually looking for a group program right now." And I was sitting across from her at lunch, and I literally took out a napkin and a pen and did some back of the napkin math to figure out, based on my current group fees, what my current be prepared for that question is what I'm trying to say. Because sometimes people need something, a different version, different format, a different way of receiving information from you. Ultimately, what you're trying to get at with all these research calls is that you want to create a pilot. And I want to give you a sense of what you need for a pilot. There are 3 things. I'm going to make it 4. There are 4 things you need for a pilot. You need content that people want to hear from you, that they want to learn, people who want to learn it, a way to convey that content to them, and a way for them to pay you. Please do not forget to get paid for the pilot. It is not going to be your full fee, but if you don't charge, you really are not validating that people will pay for this. And you do not charge $100 for 5 weeks if you ultimately want people to buy a $5,000 offer from you, because you're not validating it in that way. I generally think of about $100 for every 90-minute or 2-hour session, roughly $500 for 4 to 6 weeks. It might be higher if your end product is going to be higher. You'll know your audience, but just don't undersell the cost of the pilot. And what I then usually do is when I iterate into the next version, if I do, I will give everyone who paid the pilot the opportunity to continue by applying their amount they've already paid me towards the next cost. So to them, it isn't, in the end, doesn't cost them anything, but their willingness to pay that upfront is what helps me validate that I'm onto something. And they're giving me that ongoing feedback. And they're, it's a small group. You're looking for 4 to 12 people to be in a program for 1 session or 4 to 6 weeks. And you don't want more than 12. Ideally, you have 6 to 8. But that's this is why you talk to 20 or 30 people in 6 to 12 weeks. You find those 4 to 12 people who say yes, and they give you that money, and then you build it with them. And that is how you avoid building something that people are like, "Who are you? What is this? I don't need this." Because at the end, they're going to give you video testimonials and written testimonials, and they're going to tell their network, and they're going to refer you, right? And this is how you can get that going. And eventually, you might want to do Facebook ads, but sending people from a Facebook ad to a landing page that isn't converting is a waste of money. So do all this upfront to make sure you are building an audience before you make your offer.
Robbie, there's a couple of questions in the chat you might like to answer.
Great. Go ahead. What is the question?
Okay. First one is from Elizabeth. I do massage and body work. Can this work for me as well? This question from Elizabeth appeared at the time that you were showing the question.
The which question? The magical question?
The most recent question in the
yeah. So I could imagine it would, because there's a moment when you start telling people about stretches, or here's a product you might want to buy to sleep with, or try this positioning for ergonomics of your desk, and someone's saying like, they're telling you this is urgent, I need to resolve how my body is feeling on a day-to-day basis, and you're like, I do body work. Why don't we talk about what that would look like, and how I can help you achieve the feeling that you're looking for. You want to feel better in your body. You want to have the energy to do whatever they're saying the outcome is that they want. I think it could be a great way to do. People ask, pick your brain, like all those pick your brains. That's where this magical question lets you keep your brain somewhat intact and yet find the people who really want to work with you.
Pamela asks, and I don't understand the question. She asks, the caption link goes to a YouTube channel.
So right now, this is not being broadcast to YouTube. But when you record to the cloud on Zoom, the captions do save across the bottom of the video. And if you were then to upload it to any video platform, they should still be there.
Okay, no further questions. Robbie, we're pretty much out of time. So on behalf of EIN, allow me to thank you hugely.
Great. I'm just going to share some resources in chat though while you're wrapping up.
Okay, well, so on behalf of EIN, I thank you hugely for taking a very complicated topic and really distilling it down to its bare essentials. Very
pleasure.
well done, and very many thank yous. Have you posted the resources?
I did, and I'll also put my email address in there. I see someone just requested that, and my LinkedIn.
Beautiful. So I'm going to stop record.